My February wrap up is going to be a little bit shorter or smaller than usual. I spent 3 weeks in Thailand over the Chinese New Year. It's one of the nice benefits of being a teacher in China. You get a nice long Chinese New Year holiday break. And I went back to Thailand. I've been there many times before, reconnected with old friends, made some new friends, went to some new places. Had one of those like, why have I never been here before moments with some friends. It took me to some new places in northern Thailand. So very thankful for that if you're watching this. And I didn't read much. I wasn't really in a slump. I was just enjoying being on holiday and just kind of paying attention to where I was and kind of just getting recentered and refocused. And being away reminded me that, reading is a big part of my life, but it's not everything. And honestly, I think there's kind of a bigger conversation there about reading and about presence and the temptation to use books or other hobbies really as a way to retreat from the world. So I'm going to make a separate video about that very soon. So keep an eye out for that. This video is all about the books that I read in February. So the first book up, a collection of short stories on my Kindle. It's Uncertain Suns by Thomas Ha. I thought I had finished this before, but when I opened up my Kindle on the airplane and in the airport, I saw I still had a bit left to read, so I finished it up. And very happy that I did. This collection of short stories, very good. Thomas Ha's writing really impressed me. It's very immersive kind of writing, and it's full of lots of like those kind of light bulb moments where you're just like, oh, that's what's really going on in this story, or that's what this is really all about, which is fantastic. I really like it. Also, the prose in it, very, very clean, almost minimalist kind of prose, reminding me a bit of Octavia Butler's prose. I'll probably get roasted for this, but whatever. In the sense that it's very clean, it's almost minimalistic, and the writer's voice is not so present. A lot of times the writer's voice is very present in the prose, and that can be a very distracting thing. Sometimes it's a very nice thing if it's a good style or a good voice. But definitely here, there's very little barrier between reader and story. So you become very immersed in the stories without having to go to great lengths of description and things like that. So it's a very tricky skill, very difficult skill to have, and Thomas Ha definitely has it. The stories really have blown me away. There's a really nice mix of science fiction, post-apocalyptic fiction, social commentary, social realism, a bit of weird fiction, and even some like elements of horror, psychological horror, cosmic horror a little bit in there. One of the stories that really stood out for me is set in a post-apocalyptic world or a post-apocalyptic Earth, and there's a person kind of like trying to travel to a city, and he's being followed and kind of plagued by and nagged by this kind of rogue AI, which has a body, like a weird humanoid kind of body that will kind of morph and try to adapt the characteristics of the people it's around. And it, really drives people crazy when it does this. Really interesting story. Very, very interesting. So definitely worth checking out. I'd recommend this if you don't read much science fiction, but you're curious about it. If you read literary fiction and you're curious about science fiction, this is like a great kind of entry point, I think, into science fiction, because the writing is so clean and because it's a nice variety of stories. If you like TV shows like Black Mirror or even like the older Twilight Zone kind of stuff, I really recommend this. I think it's a really good story, and he's a writer that's definitely worth checking out. Now, this next book is something that really like overtook me. I was really overwhelmed with how much I enjoyed this book and how fascinating I found this book to be. It's Waste Tide by Qiufan. Chen Qiufan is a mainland Chinese writer. Oops, I got the book backwards. It's a mainland Chinese writer, which is important because it's a significant factor in the story. I'm not going to give a real in-depth rundown because I think this one deserves its own video, but I will talk about it a little bit. It's in the near future. I thought it was far future, but it's actually near future. It's sometime in the 21st century. There is an island off the coast of mainland China, close to Shenzhen, but like kind of between Shenzhen and Hong Kong. But it's fictional. It's a fictional island. It's called Silicon Isle, and for decades, the people of Silicon Isle have basically harvested the e-waste of the world. They recycle the e-waste of the world, and they also kind of have a trickle-down benefit, therefore, of getting lots of technology and lots of weird technology or lots of discarded technology that people don't want anymore, people don't use anymore. That kind of sets the stage for a sort of economic hitman to come in from this mega corporation. So there's a bit of cyberpunk in it where we've got mega corporations battling behind the scenes, if you will. And this economic hitman is trying to propose a sort of revamp, a buyout of the recycling activities to formally create factories to recycle it. And of course, this will all benefit the American government as opposed to the people who live there at the island. So that kind of sets the stage again. So here we get the stage set twice. It's a bit of a complex book, so I don't think I can nail it all here. But inside of that, we have individual stories of a waste worker who, not by her choice, but she kind of becomes merged with some of the technology there. There's a lot of like biotech going on. And then she becomes very much a wanted thing, if you will, because of the way that she's merged with it. And there's different people that want to have her, either have her work for them or to control her, things like that. So we've got the economic hitman, and then we've got the gangs that kind of run the island, and the gangs are an extension of Chinese clan culture, because Chinese culture is traditionally kind of run by clans and things like that. So it's a really, really fascinating story. I feel like I'm not doing it justice here. I wrote a post about this on my community page, and I'll try to recapture it here. Imagine John Woo, the famous Hong Kong movie director and writer. Imagine John Woo, Quentin Tarantino, and William Gibson smashed together in a writer's room and trying to jam out a fantastic eco-thriller cyberpunk book. And that's what you've got. You know, it's fascinating. There's intrigue in it. There's a bit of eco-terrorism in it. There's economics in it. There's social commentary. There's realism. A lot of hyper-violence. A lot of like violence that just suddenly erupts. And along with that too, there's really fascinating commentary on language. Language is a really big part of the book, and the different dialects that people are speaking. And of course, with language also comes culture. There's a bit of witchcraft and geomancy and things like that. Really fascinating book. Lots of ideas in it, possibly too much. I can make another video about this book because it's just hugely, hugely fascinating. All right, so the next book I read is a graphic novel, and I touched on this in a previous video. It's a book I've loved for a long time, so this was a reread. It's V for Vendetta by Alan Moore. I picked this up in Bangkok. I just kind of had an urge and an itch to read it, and I saw it on the shelf in one of my favorite bookstores, and I picked it up. I love this book, and it's just like weirdly relevant today, I think more than ever. I think it's actually been relevant, you know, ever since I first read it. I read it, it was first published in the late 80s. I didn't read it until the early 90s. In case you don't know, V for Vendetta, it was a graphic novel before it was a movie. I don't know if the movie like gets talked about anymore. I think it's kind of forgotten now, but it's still something that's very relevant, and it's really great commentary on authoritarianism, on the sort of manipulation of history and manipulation of information, about political violence, about the use of political violence to push social narratives and push us in certain directions with our societies and governments. Very relevant for the times. I want to make a small complaint. This is part of the DC Compact Comics. Sorry, I had to look at it there. DC Compact Comics line, which I had never seen before. And I saw this on the shelf, and I mean, it's smaller than the normal comic book size, smaller than the normal graphic novel size. And at first I was like, oh, that's really great. It's really handy. It's a nice size. And it's a pretty, it's a pretty thick book. So I thought they had like reformatted some of it to just add more pages to it. But all they did was just shrink it. I don't know if you can see. They've just shrunk it, which is horrible because this is not your typical like superhero comic where most of the story is told visually. There's lots of writing in here. There's lots of exposition. There's lots of dialogue. And that's all very tiny, which is really difficult to read. So if you're thinking about picking these up, if you're thinking about picking up the DC Compact Comics line, be careful and maybe think twice. I should have looked through this, but it was shrink wrapped. A lot of the books you buy in Asia are shrink wrapped to help fight against humidity and dust, I think. And I've read it before, so I didn't think to flip through it and see what it looked like. I just picked it up, and it's kind of a disappointing pickup, actually. The last thing I've got for you, a little bit left field for me, but if you know me, maybe not. It's Love is a Dog from Hell by Charles Bukowski. I've read this before, cover to cover, and I read it again, and the poetry in here, this is a collection of Charles Bukowski poems. I love this. It's one of my favorite collections of his. I've read a few other collections, but something about this collection it just really like cuts. It cuts right to the bone. If you've ever been through hard times, if you've ever been hard on yourself for too long or anything like that, you'll definitely identify with that. I really like Charles Bukowski's poetry. I don't care for the short stories and novels so much anymore. I liked them, in a previous time in my life, but I found that I'm kind of past that, or I'm just kind of, it's not something I need to read again or repeat again. But the poetry really, really comes back to me, and it's a style of poetry I really like, and I really like the subject matter. It's pretty rough living, and I think a lot of these came from his real life and the way he really thought. And the thing that I love about these poems, it's something that I don't know much about poetry, so I'm going to sound like an idiot when I say this, but it's something that I notice a lot, like with haiku or with Japanese poetry, traditional Japanese poetry, traditional Chinese poetry, which are typically Buddhist or Taoist or Zen poems or influenced by. But, there'll be a kind of depiction of a moment or a series of brief moments, and you kind of wonder, like, yeah, these kind of fit together. Like, why are these on the page together? What are we going to get out of this? And then you just get 2 or 3 lines at the end that just cut right through everything, and you just like, oh, that's what this is about. I'm not an expert reader on poetry, so be gentle, dear viewer, when you comment about what I like about Bukowski's poetry. And I don't read poetry very widely, so I can't really talk at length about it. But it's something I really enjoy. And I went through hell over the last couple of years, and I found reading these again kind of refreshing, actually, in a strange kind of cathartic way. Like, yeah, I've kind of been there, and I don't need to go back there again. And I did. It kind of makes more sense with some time, with some living, I guess. So that's my February wrap up. I probably got more out of it than I needed to. If you stuck with me all this way, I want to say thank you. Let me know in the comments, what you read last month. I'm also curious, like, do you ever kind of have those seasons or those periods of life where reading kind of takes a back burner, and not because you're not interested in reading, but just because you've got other things to do, not because you're busy working or things like that, but you've got some living to do, I guess is what I want to say. I've kind of been thinking about that a lot lately. So I'm curious to know what people's comments are about that. And in case you don't know, my name is Carl, and this has been Please Read Your Book.